Before we talk weeds, I just wanted to show you some magnificent podocarp forest. That was Whirinaki, and this is a stand of mixed podocarp. Giant trees down in Puriora, so you can see lush canopy after a really wet summer 2023. Beautiful stand of old growth, native bush. This is what we can have, this is what we can achieve if we keep up the good work. This is one of the protest trees down in Puriora, central North Island. Big ancient tortida tree sticking out of the canopy quite a fair distance, and very iconic. In 1978 the protesters camped up in the tops of these trees and made history, really, saved these forests. But these forests aren't fully protected yet until we've looked after the pest animals and the pest plants. This is an outstanding stand of Kodi forest on the border of the Waipawa, and of course Kōwhai in the spring, beautiful, time to celebrate. Now going on to weeds, we will, if we're not careful and we don't act fast, lose our Southern Alps to invasive pine trees. This is Aotearoa getting burnt off. Maybe 1/3 of our land was burnt. The drought-prone forests were burnt by early Polynesian, early Māori, and second big wave of forest clearing happened, the European, with the introduction of bulldozers, chainsaws. It was bulldozed, burnt, cleared, make way for pasture, farmland. This is on the steeper hill country. And that's what we've got left. Now if we want to retire all of our steep erosion prone land, turn it back into native bush, this is what we can achieve. This is what our country could look like. But we're not going to get there if we don't do very, very good weed control. Here is an example of steep erosion prone land being used for grazing, which could easily be turned into native bush and prevent sediment pollution. Is the difference between pest animals and pest plants. Pest mammals are already widely spread. There are far more pest plants than there are pest mammals, and these pest plants are generally associated with people, old farmsteads, gardens, roadsides, plants far limited, and they're in their infancy stage. So here's an example of a gully fenced off on a farm to protect a little stand of kahigatea and also stop erosion. Now we're looking at Chinese privet, woolly nightshade, pampas grass, and who knows what other shade tolerant weeds are growing in underneath that. This is a real nightmare, and you can see in the distance a hedgerow. That was where the seeds have come from. The roadsides are major vectors for spread because we don't see animals grazing on the roadsides very often, and this is an example, again, Chinese privet spreading down the roadside, hopping over the fence where we've got a forestry block that's been logged. You can also see Taiwan cherry growing in there, as well as some pines coming up. But the Chinese privet is in flower, it's flowering white, and you can see just how abundant it's become after the pine has been taken away. So unkempt land like pine forests allow these pest plants to proliferate. Now this Chinese privet follows a watercourse to the right there and flowing all the way down, so animals aren't grazing that waterway, which I think would be a good thing for the ecology, yes, but for the freshwater ecology, yes, but for the plants, no, because they get to spread. You can see jasmine, this invasive vine, going up into these gums, where we've also got other weeds like Japanese honeysuckle and blue morning glory just a little bit further down. So usually these weeds end up here because people have pulled over on the side of the road and dumped garden waste, but a lot of the time it's spread by birds. And in this instance, again, this is on the Coromandel. We've got arum lily, which is a real shocker of a weed, bit of ivy growing up that willow, and a canopy of Chinese privet. And if we have a look underneath the canopy, we've got one of the most evil plants in this country, climbing asparagus. So this is a creeper which can just pretty much choke, smother any native trees, seedlings wanting to come up and get a bit of light. This is a real shocker of a plant. Fruits prolifically, very attractive for birds, and yeah, it's a bit of a nightmare to kill. It dies easily. You have to follow it up year after year for a few years to make sure you've got on top of the seed bank. This is what we want to prevent. We want to prevent these weeds getting into our forests and having to have armies of men wearing 10 kilogram knapsacks of herbicide going through and spraying these weeds so that we can keep our forests. This is the harsh reality that a lot of people don't understand. We're still seeing nurseries selling plants that are ending up spreading like this, and we've got to do something about it quickly. This is a Japanese honeysuckle and Chinese privet infestation all the way through a pine block. So if pine is going to be a sustainable industry, they need to make sure that they are not contributing to the bulk up of seed supply for these invasive plants. Another scenario here, this is in the Bay of Plenty near Kawerau. We've got Taiwan cherry. It was promoted by our conservation department as good food for birds. And just over the way we've got a very rare stand of Rata Pohutukawa hybrid forest on volcanic soil, and it's surrounded by a whole lot of pine forest, which has got this Taiwan cherry bulking up, and it won't be very long until this rare stand of forest is being smothered. Yes, wild ginger. This is in the Dome Valley. You can see that a couple of decades ago we actually had a chance to get on top of it for very cheap, and now it's become widespread throughout the Dock Reserve and all the neighbouring properties. These are shade-tolerant weeds that are spread by birds, stopping any secondary or primary species, forest species like pūtiri or kohikoi that grow in the area from coming up. And eventually, as the natives die off, which they do, we end up with a sea of wild ginger. Here's a stand of poplars with vines and creepers. This is ivy, still being sold at our nursery, at our weed centres. An undergrowth of arum lily, stopping anything from coming up. You've got old man's beard in there, and also a little bit of Japanese honeysuckle in the area. This is an example of Japanese honeysuckle ripping through a stand of native bush in Lake Tarawera. This is a gully forest completely choked up by that vine. This is on dockland. Yeah, not a lot to say about that. It's a horrible sight. Coromandel Forest Park, right on the side of the road where there's a little pullover bay. Someone's taken the initiative to dump their weeds, their garden waste. Doesn't take much. A little bit of jasmine was dumped here. You can see what's happened over the last few years. Jasmine started to spread into the native bush. It's going to be pretty hard to go through that dense native forest to find every last seedling. That's why we need to prevent this from happening. Here is an aerial shot of Waiwera, just north of Orewa Beach, and you can see the gold standing out. This is rare coastal forest, Pohutukawa, Taraire, Kohikohi forest with mixed kauri, and you can see the tree privet, the golden flowering tree privet. A very dangerous plant, can spread, get into the old undergrowth of old growth forest, grow up. You can see a patch of dead ones here where a volunteer group has thrown a lot of energy at trying to kill a few, but there's still a lot of work to do to get on top of the seed bank. This rare forest type isn't the only type of forest threatened by tree privet. The tree privet can basically get into anything and shade things out. This is Mansion House Bay on Kawo Island, managed by Doc, and all of these weeds here are spreading around the rest of the island and also getting over to the mainland peninsula, Tawharanui. You can see tree privet, Chinese windmill palms, and all sorts of weeds growing in this place. Taken over the canopy, destroyed the native bush, and now being spread by birds and the wind back over onto the mainland. Totally irresponsible for our conservation department to put a place like this on display, let alone talk about getting rats and wallabies and possums removed from an island like this when the weeds after that would just explode. This is a pea shrub from South Africa, and also another plant from South Africa, Cape honeyflower. And actually another South African agapanthus, which everyone's very familiar with. Getting into the undergrowth of an out of control pine plantation. In many cases, pines can create a good cover crop for native bush to regenerate underneath, and then pines can be removed strategically. In this case, the smothering ground cover plants like agapanthus have just totally wiped out the undergrowth. Now, monocrops cause massive problems. In this case at Kawo, the pines have caused big slips. So in terms of the eradication on Kawo, it's just focused on animals, and once they get rid of them, the pest plants are going to explode, so funding should probably be deferred. Now, Bangalow versus Nico, a lot of nurseries, even around Matakana, selling Bangalow palms still. But you can see that lots of nurseries are just still trying to make a quick buck by selling weeds, and our EPA is allowing it. There's periwinkle, palms are a massive problem. This is Matakana Palms Nursery. They're selling all sorts of weeds there. We need a big wake up. We need a full-blown strategy. We need a change in dedication. We need accountability from our agencies. And we need serious investment. No more 30-second spray and walk away mentality. As community members, we have huge power and responsibility to shift public perception and influence our neighbours, landowners, gardeners and landscapers. Everyone can make a difference. Point the bone at your own pest plants at home, and then at your neighbours. Exotic palms have got to go. They're just not sexy anymore. If a plant jumps the fence, it must go.